Hey, welcome to the Easter edition of the Golden Bough podcast with myself, Dr. Luke, the lovely producer Jordan, and Ostic from Northern India. We are going to be talking about Chapter 39, the Ritual of Osiris, Part 2, the official rites. And I want to welcome the panel to our conversation today. Welcome, guys.
Hello,
Mm.
hello. I'm not sure what tradition we're celebrating, but
I don't think anyone really knows. And there's a lot of traditions in the air right now. Obviously, we have the Artemis missions going on. I was not anticipating
right.
talking very much about it, but this morning I woke up and Osic's like, you really need to tell me what's going on here with these different images of Earth from Apollo and Artemis. And that kind of just spawned its own little research dig. But you can see here, we're all
Yeah.
decked out in our bunny ears for Easter.
Yeah, maybe we are dressed up for the rabbit on the moon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's for those who can. I'm
We
wearing
can't
my
see.
rabbit hole shirt.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. There we go. So I'm fully decked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think these things are interconnected. It's so bizarre. Like, how many people across the nation, the United States today, are just like hunting Easter eggs and thinking about rabbits and all this other stuff while they're celebrating the risen Lord. So, um, the connections between Osiris and Easter are there to a certain degree. I believe there is a story about him entering into the moon, which we'll probably address in future podcasts since I don't have a firm grasp of it right now. I think I mentioned it last time, but it's something typically more associated with Astarte and Artemis. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to go over some of the images here on the title card to prep those who are unfamiliar with what we do. We look at the Golden Bough. We try to find correspondences with the 20th and 21st centuries, and it's part of a book project I'm working on the archetypal psychohistory of those centuries. Some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today, we've been spending a lot of time looking at the Egyptian imagery surrounding JFK, which we'll continue to do, but I want to focus a little bit more on Jackie here today. Here you see her riding a camel in Egypt, investigating the Temple of Dendera that she helped save, that eventually got relocated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. We're going to look at some of the iconography with Osiris and Isis, specifically the procession of the cow and how the cow gets associated with Isis and what the meaning of that is. And then in general, I want to look at the Egyptian elements that are associated with the U.S. space program. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious with the Saturn rocket resembling an obelisk and what that may mean. But there's much, much more. I mean, for instance, you can see here next to Blackjack Bouvier in the title card, there was some concern that there might actually be obelisks on the moon after some renderings were provided in 1966. So that caused quite a hubbub. And that's just one of those instances. I want to look at the connection between corn and the United States space program. So that's going to take us all the way back to the White Sands shooting of maize into outer space. And I don't know if it went to outer space, but up into a rocket in 1946. And you see that here from Launch Pad 33 out in White Sands. I want to think about some of the connections of the Osiris and Isis story as it relates to the relationship that Donald Trump had with JFK Jr. and what this might mean for this myth of QAnon. I don't treat these things necessarily as true or false, but how they work upon our minds and the collective dream that we call America. And I want to look at what it might mean in regards to um, the first flyby of the moon that we did in 1968 with the Apollo 8 program, which is showing remarkable parallelism with today being Easter and the flyby of the moon with the Artemis project and what that may mean. So these are just some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. There is much, much more.
Yeah, these photos of Jackie on the camels are
Yeah.
hilarious. I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just so
It's,
bizarre looking.
yeah,
She's
sometimes I
not
think
wearing
I'm
the
really
right attire
crazy.
for the deserts. It's like it's a very funny. It's like a very boss image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another one of her on a camel in Pakistan with her sister, which we'll look at later. But yeah, this is the one where she's actually inspecting the temples that she helped save. So let's go to the first slide. I wanted to provide a little bit of a quote that I think really struck me as profound. It may not be profound to you all, I've been listening slowly. I've got like a couple different books in rotation on Audible, but one of them I'm listening to is the Great Neumann's The Great Mother, and he includes this quotation at some point, and I thought, you know what, that's perfect for my evolving theory here, and I'm just going to read it real quick. It's from the Iliad by Homer, and the reason why I was going to include this is that I think it provides a functional metaphor for how we think about people becoming manifestations of these different archetypal figures. So here it goes. As is the generation of leaves, so is that of humanity. The wind scatters the leaves on the ground, but the live timber burgeons with leaves again in the season of spring returning. So one generation of men will grow while another dies. I kind of butchered that there, but I think you get the idea that the the living substrate, the life force that is generating all these different leaves that are episodic instantiations of men that then fall and then are reconstituted. I think that the tree itself, from a Jungian psychology perspective, if I'm properly understanding it, which many would argue that I'm not, becomes like the collective unconscious or the panentheistic God penetrating reality and causing these blooming, these vegetative sproutings. So I think it's kind of interesting to think about that when we look at different people that seem to be in a linear timeline, manifesting characteristics and traits of people that preceded them. This is especially interesting when we look at the synchronicities between like Lincoln and JFK, or people who may have, even while they're simultaneously alive, expressing adjacent, similar traits. And I just thought this was beautiful. How did it resonate with you all?
I'm just impressed that even in the 7th century, he's coming up with like a perfect metaphor. Like, as I dig deep into this imagery, I can see like, okay, leaves have a like, very fixed structure, and then, I mean, it's a good metaphor in itself. Like, it defines like what a generation looks like, and we can easily visualize it. And I think it resonates with me, just in general, but not just with the Lincoln and Kennedy thing that we're talking about. In general itself, it's like a new branch of a tree would be like some disruptive technology that is throwing us off into another path. It's a good analogy, and I think trees, they're always good with images, good models.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably challenging, right? Like it's challenging to a lot of our egalitarian notions of what we think individuals are, because it means that whatever branch that you're born on has like endemic traits that you're going to manifest. And it's going to imply some sort of, I don't want to necessarily say hierarchy, but implicit difference within every single individual, depending on like what branch of the collective unconscious they're like grafted onto or springing from.
Yeah. But through the process of individuation, you can, what's the word, integrate all those aspects and no longer be subconsciously ruled by them. So I don't think it's necessarily like a moral lacking, if that makes sense. If whatever your heritage or ancestral lineage that you've inherited entails, but the task in front of all of us, I think, is to integrate it so it's not, overtaking whatever our spiritual proclivities would be, what our individual path is.
Right. I mean, you could argue though with this metaphor that there's not a lot of room for free will, right? Like how much free will does a leaf have to actually do that integration? Like, and this is an interesting question. It's like, where does this metaphor break down?
Yeah, well, free will, that
I guess it's an
how long you
analogy,
got?
but yeah.
Um, but we always have choices in how we respond or react to the things around us. So yeah, you can't control the seasons. Well, they're trying. They're doing a
Mhm.
pretty good job. But as individuals, we can't control what's happening around us or even what's happening within us sometimes, but we do have a choice in how we show up for it. Do we dissociate? Do we observe it? I don't know that free will is what I thought it was when I was younger.
Yeah. Well, you could run this the other way too. I mean, this possibly says that, that this is the idea that that the leaves themselves may have more consciousness than we typically ascribe to them, given our physical frameworks that are in play in modernity. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. We've got a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
I've got 18 more slides, so. But I thought
I'm
this was a
happy to get into the consciousness of trees, but I'm not
yeah,
sure that is,
yeah.
what today
No,
is about.
it's fine. I mean, it really is all about that in some way. I mean, this is the Golden
The
Bough, a
golden
book,
bough, that's
a
true.
book named after a branch of a tree. So
But
let's,
we've gotten into it before.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's go to the next one if we can.
Sure.
So, okay. So I mentioned talking about artists. So Ostic wakes me this morning. The first thing I wake up, he's like, what's going on with these images of Earth from Apollo and Artemis? And I'm like, geez, I don't know, man. There's just a lot going on. And but I couldn't turn the request away. So I found a little bit out about this, and I share this in our Instagram group. If I don't know if either of you had a chance to look at it, but some of the interesting things that I found just doing like a 20-minute dig into this morning is that I mean, for starters, the first time we did a flyby of the moon was Christmas 1968 with Apollo 8, and this is where they read the first chapter of Genesis from space about the creation of Earth, and it had this religious tone to it. Now, similarly, this guy Victor Glover, who's one of the astronauts, has delivered this Easter message, doing this perfect sort of symmetry with the Christmas message that was delivered in 1968 that he did. I think he did this yesterday. And about the same time, they provided us with a new blue marble, new image. It's actually called the Hello World image. This is what they're calling this. So we have the blue marble on the left that was produced by Apollo 17. We actually did not get a full image of the Earth until the last moon mission. I think we got a partial one on Apollo 8. But then we got this new one here. And they're actually how these pictures are made are different, supposedly. I think anybody who follows this closely knows how I feel about all of this. But the one on the left, the blue marble, is supposedly made with a film camera, and it's being illuminated by the sun. And this is part of the reason why you can't see any stars in the background. It's a big sort of point about people who are trying to debunk the moon landing, about why you can't see stars in space. Whereas the Artemis 2 one, I did not realize this, because it was like, what happened to the Earth between 1972 and 2026? Why does it seem to have a shine on it? That's actually the atmosphere being lit up by the sun, because the Earth is eclipsing the sun from this perspective, I guess. And from this image, from what we're told, the Earth is actually being illuminated by the moon. Now, that's a big deal, especially since Apollo is a solar deity and Artemis is a lunar deity. So it's like the conquering aspect of the masculine is being replaced by the illuminating nature of the feminine. Okay, which would make sense given the names of these gods and goddesses that are associated with these missions. Now, there's also, and I didn't go too deep into it, I think there's stars visible from this image on the right, and there's a corona that's visible, like the southern and northern lights, I think. But it I mean, this seems perfectly timed, and it makes complete sense when you look at one of the most famous images. And I did not really go too deep into this. I did get it correct that they would launch on April 1st, so I will take credit for that. But I did not really anticipate the whole Easter thing. I didn't really apply my psychic energy beyond that. Of course, Artemis of Ephesus is covered in cosmic eggs, right? And so for them to do this at Easter, where we associate this with eggs, with fertility, with Artemis, with Astarte, makes total sense. And then we have Christmas being about the birth, right? And then Easter is about the rebirth or the resurrection. So clearly there's a message being communicated here. What exactly was born, what is being reborn, I think is up for conversation. Is it just a metaphor about the space program, or obviously a type of consciousness? And one may argue that the type of consciousness is that we're transitioning from a masculine sort of consciousness that was brought into the world via Apollo, and now we're getting into something more communal, more nurturing or something like that with the maternal. So these are some of the passing thoughts that I had on this. I want to get your guys' reaction to this.
Wow, that is so significant. The source of the lights illuminating the earth.
Yeah.
It makes me here's what I'm already observing. I think we're going to start seeing more and more women placed in visible positions of power. This isn't new, but I'm curious if that will continue to accelerate. Seemingly, humanity is shifting from a quote patriarchal mode into a matriarchal mode. And my hope is that we'd be able to integrate the two. But this Artemis mission, I think, is maybe a signal on the fractal that we're swinging to the other side of the pendulum.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more we can swing. I guess some would argue there's a lot more
Mm.
swinging to do. It seems like that pendulum has swung, but what do I know? I'm a greedy white man. So what do I know?
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
wouldn't
I
say
agree.
that.
This is very significant, the thing you pointed out, because I could not have anticipated this illuminated by moonlight. And as Jordan is saying that matriarchy is coming back, so it's like, where did the word matrix originate from? Matrix originate from
Yeah,
the
so
mother.
womb.
It's like,
Yeah.
and like lots of pods, and like this Artemis has lots of pods attached to her. So I don't know. It looks like that. I mean, I remembered the Matrix movie looking at this image, and then I thought, oh, it actually fits here. So yeah, I
Well, and they transitioned themselves. The creators
Yeah.
yeah,
transitioned
Yeah.
into women
I don't
also.
know why they did that. It's a strange thing.
But it's interesting how it fits into this fractal,
Oh yeah. No,
regardless of
okay,
their
they
personal
actually did
reasons.
it. Yeah, sure.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fascinating.
they're walking their talk at least.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, something that I've not had a chance to think this all through. There's just so much going on in the world and so much going on with the material that we have to cover today. But, we've talked about the blue marble as producing this sort of new form of consciousness that essentially was global. I believe there's a whole book that I've got on it that I haven't had a chance to read yet, but it's called The Overview Effect, right? Where these astronauts were having this like religious sort of ecstatic experience in outer space, viewing the interconnectivity of everything. And that's kind of what maybe what Victor Glover is saying here. It's interesting. They kind of let him do this like secular sermon about Easter, where he's like, oh, believe me, I'm out here in outer space, and we are so loved. We are this oasis, this blue dot, like something, whether you believe in God or not, just loves us so much, and it's so bizarre, right? It's so it is so bizarre. I'm trying to think like with this new image that they're giving to Earth, how this is ultimately going to affect our consciousness. We've talked about it like transitioning us into a more a feminine sort of consciousness. I didn't necessarily think about the ecological developments that came in the Philosopher's Stone developments that came out of that first image, being masculine in nature. It seemed like an integration because we had the solar and the union, the solar and the lunar united, that it was a kind of a perfect integration. So I've got a lot to think about this still.
Hmm.
Yeah. All of this is
Okay.
so
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, it is.
Watching it, I felt hypnotized. I felt incredibly drowsy the rest of the day, and I wasn't
It-
anticipating that.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's unnerving for a lot of people. I got this academic journal from the University of Michigan that was all these essays and these case studies about the psychological feelings and effects about the moon landing in the 60s and 70s. And there were a lot of documented cases of psychosis and hysteria that happened
Mm.
during the moon landings. It is an unsettling event, and someone close to me is very unsettled by it too. Doesn't really understand what's going on, but finds it to be unsettling. I remember
Mhm.
this. Not. I remember having a similar sort of feeling. Um, I was in high school when they announced that they had found life on Mars. Right. I think there was like an asteroid or something like that that they say they dug up in Antarctica, and it had life, and it was like contributing to this panspermia hypothesis. And I remember feeling really rattled, but not being able to really express it. And like I remember like calling my pastor at my church and being being like, "Can you make me not feel like this incredible existential dread?" I think I was like 16. I didn't know what was going on. And he was like, "Oh, there's like all sorts of life, and God is the dominion has dominion over all of it." And I was like, "Okay." But I remember feeling unsettled by that when I was like 16. None of this bothers me now because I got a different look on it. But yeah. Okay.
I
Well,
just one thing. I remember in 2001, A Space Odyssey. So, I mean, apart from the fact that Hal was originally supposed to be a woman named Athena,
yeah.
and like the whole movie, it's about humans not having agency. It's like he has delegated all his agency to this whole machine who can see everything, who can control everything, who can make anyone die at a moment's wish. So, like the whole spaceship, the contraption they are in, it's like they have very little control. They all they do is maintain it, all the two astronauts, and all the other things is done by. So I think in that movie itself there is a thing about, the feminization of technology, feminization caused by over
Mm,
reliance on technology.
that's
It's like
interesting. That's
that. I
interesting.
mean, I felt that viscerally itself, but like because they're so emotionless, it's like I've, it's like that book called Brave New World. It's like you're so numb to everything. Just it just is. And yeah, that's what I felt. And even in that movie there was a certain scene, like when before they went on that mission, there were a few women sitting there and they were like watching women competing judo matches. So I don't know if that was very progressive during the late 60s, but like I think Kubrick wanted to say something about it, like okay, the women will proceed and they will be the fighters, because we don't
Mm,
see fights. Like we see a one image of a fight, and Kubrick, he fights are very important to him. He made a whole movie about day of a
of
fight
course.
and the monkeys fighting and everything. But in that movie there's one fighting scene, like apart from the monkeys, and that's two women fighting and like they're doing judo. So that was interesting to me. I thought about it,
That
like is it a
yeah, you could
matriarchy, is it a patriarchy, like what is it?
yeah, I mean you could have a whole conversation about fighting in 2001 because I know the scene you're talking about. I mean, there is the struggle between Hal and Dave too. And you could say that that struggle between Hal and Dave ultimately induces the transformation where Dave like stops becoming an automaton and becomes some
Yeah,
other
yeah.
kind of being. So it's interesting. All right, we have so much to cover. We're 23 minutes in.
Okay,
Let's go.
we'll do it one day.
So one day.
That's good though.
But you're right. You're right. Okay. Okay, so this I alluded to this last time, and I've been trying to think about these seemingly like what's going on. Like this whole project has sort of like, okay, we see the necessity of including, like there's this trouble about determining about what's in and what's out when talking about these different cycles of history. And I'm kind of hanging my hat on that the Trinity test, the JFK assassination, and the Apollo missions are part of an interconnected unit. And perhaps it starts again. I think we went by looking at Vico and these thunderclaps of history, and perhaps figuring out what the cycles of them are. Perhaps it like restarts at 9/11, and then we have COVID and whatever else. And thinking about how far back it goes. Obviously, when we look at all the different synchronicities, and gosh, I think if there's been anything valuable about this study that we've done, think about how many novel new synchronicities that we have pulled out about JFK and Lincoln. If you were just to take that from this, I feel like that's like a contribution to schizo scholarly culture. But I've wondered, because you could look at this like, is it when you have like the objective metascript, right? If we're talking about these like grammatical units of the collective unconscious that are all these different archetypes that manifest in these different mythologisms that are a reality, does it kind of cycle and go faster and faster and faster? Whereas, like, you know, when we talk about Trinity to Apollo to perhaps a reset, we talk about like an 80, you know, a 60 or an 80-year period or something like that. And then does it speed up? Does the spiral tighten? Or conversely, does it take longer as we look at this? And I've got that portrayed here with these different images about how that might look. One thing that I think is a potential data point to say that this might be consistent is, and I didn't really connect this before, but you really could apply all this stuff that this whole killing of the king ritual, obviously, to Abraham Lincoln. And given that we are, you know, in the middle of Easter, it's a floating holiday, and I was like, oh yeah, like Lincoln died on Good Friday, and so we have JFK dying just before Thanksgiving, and the reason why this is important, we're recognizing how important these different harvest and fertility festivals are. So, and Easter is typically associated with Attis and Adonis, whereas Osiris is typically associated with the month that JFK dies in, November. It's not perfectly matched. It's about 5 or 10 days off or something like that. But it's essentially the same time that Osiris experienced his assassination and dismemberment and mourning. And we'll look at that calendar a little bit closer here in the coming slides. And it makes me wonder if there is like an inbuilt, what I'm calling 100-year theophonic pulse, that these are like benchmarks that allow us to determine when this killing of the king ritual will happen again. Okay. So rather than think about them as shortening or expanding cycles of time, they actually might be stable, constant 100-year periods. And it's interesting to think about it going from an Attis Adonis figure to an Osirian figure, right? That kind of the rejuvenation of the country after the Civil War with Lincoln, right? And then the Osirian connecting to Ra, the ascending aspect connecting to the Apollo program that was JFK. So I don't know. There's also this book, The Fourth Turning, which I've mentioned at various points, that might be helpful in determining this. But I just want to point out the Easter Thanksgiving similarity here, and with these other dying and rising vegetative gods with Lincoln and JFK.
Yeah, this is good. I also like the idea about you talking about like some figures might accelerate these cycles or some figures. So I keep thinking about that. So maybe like a different kind of person emerges and like his inclusion in that dynamic, the world that already exists. It's like it's like a fertile ground waiting for a seed. So whenever it gets that kind of a person or a circumstance, it quickly originates and then replicates itself. So that's what I was thinking about when you said like which figures might accelerate or like does it slow down or does it go faster?
Yeah.
So
Well, that's interesting. You know, a lot of people are, I think I sent this to our Instagram chat, like more people are becoming aware of the importance of Golden Bough, and it's like it's the deep conspiracy researchers. They get into Hoffman and they get into Downard through the veteran truthers, and I don't think they're really reading the Golden Bough, but they're taking what they know of the Golden Bough and applying it to us. And I think I sent a post to you guys, like, the consciousness of this is rising. People are saying, oh, well, Charlie Kirk was a slain king. He filled that role. And look at what we got. Charlie Kirk is killed, and now we get the Artemis mission. You know, they probably are connected. I don't know. I haven't thought deeply about it. I've kind of limited my scope to people that are in office, and I don't know if I necessarily would have considered Charlie Kirk a king figure. But not saying they're wrong, but it is kind of uncanny that you have a high profile assassination and then we got a moon mission.
yeah, I mean it's even like short in the neck. So
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. But I think this could, if this is right, and I don't know if it's right, it's a data point. This is an evolving theory. I mean, one could potentially expect that the next king that's to be killed might happen around 2060. Like I might be alive to see that. Like the next, I mean, I'm saying is, I'll say it's in 2059. Go back to my YouTube video that I made in 2026, 34 years ago. You're the dude. Get into a hole that day, avoid it. But yeah. And then also, you have this, I mean, you could potentially, I don't really talk about the aftermath. I mean, I've talked about the ecology movement and things like that, but it is a little bit mystifying to me how to think about American history after Apollo, because it's not like the 70s where this, I mean, the 70s were a cool decade in terms of like music and stuff, but it was a pretty sad decade for a lot of different reasons. And then it kind of comes back to life with Reagan in the 90s, and then it gets totally deflated with 9/11, and we've pretty much been there ever since. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what to think about where this has gone from the 2000s on.
I think just an opinion. I thought like Americans in general, they have an identity that is like told to them over and over again. So it's like even with politics and everything. I think like the people in the South, the people with like strange accents, they are kind of more authentic than the educated ones there. It's my opinion because you're being told to do so many things like this is the right thing to do, this is the right thing to do. If you don't, it's like telling people to become like npcs, and I think this happens too much in America because I interact with, like, I see it on videos on Instagram. So like with these events, when these events happen, like see Calvin Klein event and like any other
Mhm.
event, they create like a rupture in the consciousness. And a- as long as so many people are connected and invested in this story that they're telling the people that this is what's happening, this is what's at stake, it's like a puppet show. So if they do something, it's going to have a real world effect on the consciousness of the people. So so many people, they got like sprung into action. A lot of right wingers were saying we're gonna kill people over this or something like that. So it's like, as it depends on how strongly you're connected to the consciousness that is being told, the cultural zeitgeist. That's what I think. And like with more mass media and with more news, I was also thinking about just one minute. Like I was reading about Rolex and people talking about, like, they have an image of Switzerland in their mind. Like Switzerland is a country that has been neutral and it has only produced the cuckoo clock. You know that quote Orson Welles makes in The Third Man. He says, "What did Swedes produce? They produced cuckoo clock." That's not. Is that even true? But then I realized that no, it's not true. Like it's a modernist conception that we think that we know about the world. It's we carry over the mythology from that world, but we do not question it, and then we move, like, roll with it. And then years later people realize that that's what you were telling then, it's not actually the truth. But like, even with, when I think about like the hotter stuff, like how did people differentiate him from the leaders of the day? Like there were so many dictators around. Why did they single Hitler out? Then I think like, what was going on? What were they being told? Like why would the British, they had like colonized India, they were creating famines here. Like how did they have this high like conscience? like like, no, we should stand up against this thing. Like, I mean, they're just like you. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, w- I'm just thinking about what kind of material they were telling people, how were they differentiating themselves, and like what were the values there. Like Charlie Chaplin made a film about him in 1936, even before
Yeah,
he did anything. Like 3 years. Like, what's going
the
on?
great
It's
the
it,
great dictator. Yeah, I I oftentimes wonder if the Charlie Chaplin mustache was like pre-programming for Hitler, but that push broom mustache is a whole thing. The Great Dictator is a fantastic movie. I think Charlie Chaplin was part of this whole puzzle matrix that we look at here. Um, okay, look, we got so much to cover, so let's just push through if we can. Jordan, I think I have you reading some here, if that's okay.
Yeah. Following the 30 BC Alexandrian reform, Egyptian Osirian festivals transformed from a drifting 365-day calendar into a fixed stationary, liturgical year, anchored by monumental inscriptions at sites like Culm, Ombo. This change aligned traditional agricultural seasons, Aket, Peret, Shamu, and the five sacred epigeminal days with specific solar dates, standardizing rituals that once migrated throughout the year.
Thank you. So the image here we have on the left is from Kam Ombo, one of these temples that they were able to use this inscription. They were able to use this to derive the calendar, and I've snagged this. I believe it's correct from the internet. It's from the Association Biblica International. But you can see here the three different seasons that the Egyptian calendar was split up into: the flood season or the inundation season, the sowing season, and the harvest season. We're going to primarily concern ourselves today in this chapter with the third and fourth month of the flooding or inundation season. On this chart, it just lists as the third month of Aket, fourth month of Aket, and it has a little bit of a there's a little bit of a transliteration here that's different from how Frazer does it. But essentially, this chart has it as Huthor, which for our purposes is going to be Aether. And it also has the fourth month as Kohorka, which we are going to call Koyak. Okay. And these roughly correspond to November and December on our calendar, although it's not like a perfect one-to-one kind of match or anything like that. So that's going to be guiding. We're going to kind of get into the weeds or the reeds, pun intended there, on this. So you can go to the next slide if you like, Jordan. And I have you reading for this as well?
Yes.
I think I do. Why don't you introduce it for us?
In the official mystery rites, it says the mourning of Osiris's death was centered around a gilt wooden cow representing Isis, the divine cow, and maternal nourisher of the pharaoh. This sacred image, often called Shintayet, or the widow, featured a golden sun between its horns to symbolize the rebirth of light and end of winter solstice. Iconography Isis absorbed from the goddess Hathor. During the annual festival, the cow was processed to represent Isis's search for Osiris's body, while participants beat their breasts in sorrow and illuminated their homes across Egypt with rows of oil lamps. This deep religious association granted the cow a status of extreme ritual purity and protection from sacrifice, distinguishing it as a stationary symbol of the life giving solar cycle and the god's eventual resurrection.
Thanks. So this was new to me. I had no idea that Isis was associated with the cow, although it's not surprising to me. I mean, we've looked at if you were to tell me this, I wouldn't be like completely shocked, but it was interesting to learn about some of these details. I mean, obviously, this has got to be encouraging this idea of a sacred cow idea. I don't know. I mean, Osik, maybe you want to look for some cultural parallels. I know the cow is very revered in India as well. Do you think it has any connection to this?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, I have postulated that Indian culture, cows have been very essential to the daily lives of people. Like, so I think that's important. I feed cows every day on my way to
Do
work.
you really?
Yeah, there's cows roam around on the roads everywhere. So like you can feed them. All their shepherds, they carry them through the roads. It's a fun place. But like, yeah, it's a new thing to me, and I think it's a good thing. I don't know. I
It's
don't mind
interesting.
it.
I mean, something that's going to be relative. I mean, in my mind, I see cows all the time. I don't necessarily associate them with fertility goddesses, but you can understand where people in the not so remote past may have thought this thing. I mean, obviously, I think Jordan probably alluded to this in the writing that I had her read, but the idea of a cow providing sustenance through its milk to sustain the community becomes this figure for the divine mother, just as Isis sustained Horus here. We have her Isis with the cow head. I mean, this stuff's creepy. I mean, it's both. The deeper I get into this, I understand, but also it seems like very like Rothschild party as well. To see like this naked woman with a cow head feeding a child. But I think, and I'm not completely, I don't completely have this all figured out. But I think what's going to happen, we're going to look at some synchronization about how this procession of the cow and these months and whatnot is going to somehow connect to the birth of Horus or Hippocrates. And this would be interesting because then we have Apollo 8 happening on Christmas. So we get, that's part of the, if we're going to attach it to, we'll have this debate about whether or not Apollo can be seen as Ra or can be as Horus. If Horus is born close to Christmas, then you can see how the Egyptian mythology is being woven into the 1968 lunar flyby. And I guess it stands to reason that it's still there today with Artemis 2, although I've not had a chance to diagnose it. But these images are cool, huh? Like these. So if you and I were to go into an Egyptian temple and we start seeing stuff like this, like we could look smart. We could say, hey, that's Isis right there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess we should go.
It's interesting to me too. I've got to work this out. Well, you see Isis, she's got the sun in her horns there. I was given how so many of the other mother goddesses are associated with the moon. I would have assumed that this was the moon before I went into it at all. And we're going to see that Osiris is somehow connected to the moon. And of course, then Horus is connected to both of them. He's got his one eye is for the sun and one eye is for the moon, and he loses his eye, and that's why there's only the single eye of Horus. But I don't have mastery over this. There's lots of mechanics of Egyptian religion that I'm still figuring it out. I like to say here that I'm just like a week ahead of everybody else. I don't know. I'm not some expert on any of this, but yeah. Interesting stuff. I think we can go to the next one if you want, Jordan. So I have talked about QAnon on this program, not because I'm some QAnon pusher, but it's hard for me not to, if we're going to look at how well the archetypes of Osiris and Isis line up with JFK and Jackie, it's impossible for me not to think about, especially like when you see like JFK Jr. saluting his father's casket, it's an archetypal fulfillment of the role of Horus. And I've the deeper I get into this, I don't know what's going on with the QAnon thing. I have no idea. But I do think that there is like necessity and push with these archetypal narratives. And I think last time I dug a little bit into the Horus story, and he goes away and then he pops out and he has revenge on Set and the conspirators that killed his father. That tracks, intentionally or not, pretty well with what people are saying about the whole QAnon narrative, that JFK Jr. is in hiding in the marshes, and that one day they're going to pop out and they're going to have these military tribunals, which seem to mirror the tribunals or whatever that were done for Set and his conspirators. Well, and I got to think about an episode that we did, gosh, very early on, where we looked at all the Jupiterian imagery that is associated with Donald Trump. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, we found like 15 different things that pointed to Trump being Jupiter. And I revisited the Greek interpretation of these different Egyptian deities, and Jupiter, Zeus for the Romans and the Greeks corresponds to Ra. Now, why might that be interesting? Why that might be interesting is that in the story of Horus and Ra and its revenge on Set, it's almost like Ra is the vehicle or the forward-facing aspect of Horus to have his revenge. And that's one of these like implicit like narrative subplots that's part of QAnon, is that JFK Jr. and Trump were very close friends, and that they may have set this plan in motion with the help of like military intelligence and all these other things. And, here's an image of the two of them together and Trump being on the cover. And when Trump talks about JFK Jr., he did it like this past week. He speaks about him in the present tense occasionally. He's like, oh, JFK Jr. is a handsome guy. It's like, don't you mean was? Don't you mean was? He'll make these little slips like that. And people go, oh, just Trump's got dementia. He doesn't even know when people are dead. But I just want to point this out. And there is a story in Egyptian mythology of a merger between Ra and Horus. There is something in a later mythology known as the Ra Harakti merger, represents the ultimate symbolic convergence of power and legitimacy within this modern official rite, where the solar forward-facing. No, I'm having the AI apply it, but you get the idea. And we over here on the right, you can see this merger of Ra and Horus in this figure of Ra Horakte. And so if you think about JFK Jr. and Trump being this merged entity, the mythological narrative seems to have a necessity to it. Now, I'll say this as well. We were talking about like Artemis and what's going on with that. I got that they were going to launch on April 1st, and that's cool. I mean, part of that was like informed. Like, I was just kind of like, I was following it very close. I was following it more closely than others, and then I could make the educated guess. But I've also said that I don't think it's going to happen because the landing's not going to happen because of the story between Artemis and Orion, and Artemis accidentally kills Orion in the narrative. So something should go wrong. Although I was telling Jordan this morning, they're really committed to this Artemis program. They're really committed to it. Like, I don't know if I feel as confident about that, seeing how committed they are to this. Like, it was easier for me to say that when they just kept delaying and delaying and delaying, but seeing they're following through. So I don't know. I may look really bad here with these predictions. I don't like to make them, but I am trying to test out, and I don't know how else to do it except, with peer review in this scenario, whether or not the archetypes will allow us to make predictions. But we have to wait 2 years until they try to land. So, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna pause there and let you guys reflect on this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that. I mean, some of it is what dimension are we calibrating to? What will be expressed through this archetype, I think, is contingent on the state of the collective unconscious. So things can still fit the archetypal pattern or still fit the symbolic pattern, but be expressed in different ways. And yeah, I think it is difficult to predict specific events in this manner, but I think you do see a general arc of energetic expansion, maybe is the way to put it.
What do you think, Osik?
I think you explained it well enough for everyone. I just want to see it like play out. I know about these
Yeah.
ideas because you've been discussing them so much over the past few months, but like I think we have discussed this idea before, so I'm like waiting for it to play out. Like,
Yeah, I can't make it go any faster. I'm not in control. I'm just telling you what I see. I mean, and it all builds on it. When we did this whole Jupiter analysis of Trump, I didn't expect it was going to come back to him being Ra, some merged deity, Ra Haraktai. Like, I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just like,
I
I'm just
mean,
telling you what I see. I think it's
yeah.
funny. I'm thinking back like how I was able to like say that if they're going to launch, they're going to launch on April Fool's Day. It was do you remember how I got to that? It was through the Nick Drake album. I think that was like the deciding thing, because and I posted on my Twitter and I think it got like 2 likes. I don't think I posted again about this whole like Artemis Easter connection. It got like 2 likes, but because there was a pink moon on April Fool's, and the cover of Nick Drake's Pink Moon has a U.S. rocket blasting to it. So
Yeah.
I think that was like kind of like I took that as like Oh, the universe is saying this. I don't even know how I'm supposed to codify this into a methodology. It's just signs. I'm reading them and omens.
The
Ugh.
whole event is so coded with all these metaphors that we've been talking about, the rabbits and Easter thing. Like it's just layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. I think
Yeah.
Trump himself, in 2016 when he was supposed to be elected, I used to see like some edits about him, like soon after he got elected. So I think he used to say, "ISIS wants you." He's like he does things like that. Like what
Oh,
does that
yeah.
mean? So I
Yeah.
used to think
Well, I
like,
mean, that's a very strange thing because obviously that we have ISIS, the terrorist organization in our world, or we did. It was like a big. I don't know what its status is now, but
that
it was a
was
big
a
thing at least in the
that was a
2010s.
Israeli operation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I know all about this. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You're gonna get me in trouble. Trust me. Trust me. I know all about these things. Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. Next slide. Do I have you reading for this, Jordan, or do I think I do have you saying a little something. Jordan?
I don't think
No, this is me.
so.
This is me. Okay. I should have been brushing up on it. Okay. I think I can just go through the chart here. Sorry for the delay. So, Frazer pretty much tells us like how this breaks down, and I use the AI to help us, bring it more in alignment with our calendar. But supposedly, the murder of Osiris and the commemoration of Osiris's death, which kicks off the winter of darkness, happens on Aether 17, which translates roughly to November 13th of our calendar, and then we're gonna have the mourning period, which I believe lasts it lasts for 4 days or so, but that happens from like Aether 17 through 20th, and we have it broken down a little bit here. We have the Festival of the Lamps, the Search, the Discovery, and what was interesting about this during this Discovery on the 19th, which I believe is our November 15th. He talks about priests carry a shrine to the sea. Fresh water is poured into a golden casket. The crowd shouts, "Osiris is found." Now, why do I bring our attention to that? I found through this research that JFK had two coffins. He had the coffin. He had this incredibly heavy bronze coffin that I cannot find a color picture of it. It was a Elgin Hanley coffin. You can see it being loaded onto Air Force One here. And if bronze is not gold, but bronze gives off a gold kind of shine if viewed in the right kind of light. So that seemed to be a bit of a synchronicity with the golden casket of Osiris. And they in 1966 supposedly they end up burying this thing off the coast of like Maryland or Delaware or something like that. And I thought it was interesting. They drilled 42 holes into it, which is a pretty important number for Osiris. I have to look at my notes to I forget if there's like 42 judges. I've got to look into it, but it's not perfect, right? But it is strange. There are 42 divine judges and there are 42 negative confessions that are involved with the Osiris rites. So, and then going further here, there's the molding ceremony that is talked about where priests mold a moon-shaped image of the god from vegetable paste, spices, and incense to serve as a vessel for his resurrection. So, I mean, that's where we're getting. See, this is part of what I was saying earlier. Osiris becomes linked to the moon, and I had the AI here make little images of these moon-shaped effigies that are then planted and then sprout. I mean, it's very similar to the ecological movement springing out of the Apollo program, and we'll look more into that. But I thought that was interesting. And then at the very end on Aether 20, the god is restored to life, sometimes represented by a living boy, symbolizing the reborn deity. Which, with this in mind, when John does the salute to his father at the end of the funeral, that always mystified me. But I feel more confident. It's like, I got you, Dad. Like I will finish what they started, and that kind of fits into all this. And so you can see here, JFK, he gets killed on November 22nd, which is 9 day. There's a 9-day difference here between these two calendars. So if it fell perfectly on those dates, I guess I'd feel like more certain about it, but it lines up pretty good, but it's also kind of like in a blender. It's like the elements are all there, but they're kind of out of order. Like, is this golden casket thing, this bronze gold casket, if it is truly, because I can't find a color picture, I can't really see it. I'm told from accounts that I was able to read about it, it did seem to have a very golden-like shine. This is the best. The one in the top right-hand corner here is kind of a hybrid. I think where you see the gold bronze, that's kind of what it would have looked like, but I don't know for certain. So it's a little messy. And I could completely understand if someone said I was off my rocker for trying to connect these two things. I think the totality of the evidence says that they are connected, but it's messy. So there we go with that. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's weird that 42 keeps popping up.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, this moon thing is pretty interesting. Like, I also kept thinking about with the effigies thing, like the Catholics, they feed on the bread and then they feed people little
Yeah.
things. And you once said it looks like the moon, and you're taking a bite of the moon or something.
Yeah.
It's like it's they say that they're eating the body of Christ. So that came to my mind with all the moon connection in Osiris. Also, I was thinking about this calendar, like maybe because if it was Georgian date, then it would have gone to November 22. Because since you said that you were born on Christmas Day,
Yeah.
yeah,
I need to look
it
into
it, it,
that.
it, it might actually be. So I was looking into it, like maybe
That's
I've gotten the
interesting
Georgian dates.
because I assumed that Frazer translated it into the Gregorian calendar, but maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't. So let me make a note to check on that.
Even
Something
if it
else.
is, it could be like one code away from it. It's like it's just one switch of a unit away. That's what it
Like,
is.
does it matter? Like, does it matter that it's 9 days off? Like, if let's say
But like it's
I'm able
specifically
to
9 days off. It was 7 days off, 6 days off. Then we could have like rubbed it off. But like 9 days off, it's so close to being perfect. Just if we
yeah.
change the calendar, and like I think there's like levels of people want to code things. They code things like this. They just do it one level away.
And
Yeah.
then calendar is hijacked and all out of whack already.
Yeah, we could have a whole conversation about whether or not we have the right calendar to be judging this. Like, there are so many different, there's a whole thing about calendrical studies, and like, I mean, we just might not have the right calendar, and someone above us has the right calendar and knows what day it really is.
I think we've already delved into this, but the contrast of the calendar that was used by people who were just following nature contrasted with the priest class that was more an intellectual abstraction. I think that's where the illumination on this subject can be found.
All right. So the calendar before our calendar was the Julian calendar. And so November 22nd, you guys talk while I figure this out. Talk.
I mean, we don't have to figure this out right now.
I do.
I think even if you find like the correct translation, all the calendars are manipulated. Like,
It
and
says
even this
November
week,
26th. Like
Mm,
the Aether 7 is called Hathor 17, so it's like November 26th in Gregorian. That's what the
mhm,
AI says.
Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I mean, even this week, right? We have Easter, we had the equinox recently, we have these spring festivals of the maiden. We have like there's a whole group of like energetic points that are being celebrated and expressed and ritualized all around
No.
this energetic moment, even if they're a week spaced apart. I still think
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I
I
mean,
think you can get a feel of the time from the month itself. Like
yeah,
November, we have this, we can sense all these things. So it does not, it's like switching the goalpost here, but like,
yeah.
yeah, similarities are
So,
uncanny.
so on the Julian calendar, JFK would have died on November 9th. So he would have died 4 days in advance of Aether 17. That's my understanding.
November
Versus
9th, man, it's literally 9/11.
that
It's,
it is 9/11, isn't it? It's
yeah.
11/9, 9. It is.
And 9/9, they're doing it in the Julian calendar, maybe. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on.
All right. Okay. I think we accomplished. Oh, I'll say this. One of the reasons why Osiris might be connected to the moon are the 14 dismembered pieces of Osiris may actually connect to the 14 phases of the moon. And that's part we have, and that kind of gets to something I'm going to talk about here in a second. I made a purchase. So to figure this out. So let's go to the next slide if we can. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So to do a little bit of a comparison, when we look, because we're using the abridged golden bough, I was just like, you know what? Like Osiris is connected to the moon. Well, I look at my index and I see Osiris in the sun. Where's the Osiris in the moon part of my book? Well, it's not there. It's in the 12 or 13 volume version. I believe that came out in 1911. I got to look into this, but you can see how much more it has. And how much more in depth it goes. And chapter 8 of volume 2 of volume 6 of the 12 volume set, there's like he has 2 books dedicated to Adonis, Attis, and Osiris, volumes 1 and 2 altogether, and this is in volume 2. So chapter 8 of that is Osiris and the moon, and you can see all this, the doctrine of lunar sympathy. It goes into much more detail, and to me, out of everyone we've looked at is trying to like map on to JFK and Jackie, whether it be Attis or Adonis. It really does seem that it's Osiris and Isis to me. It seems like that's the strongest, the one that I have to like reach the least for. So I was like, oh, I'm going to try to get these two volumes. All right. That just a deal with Adonis, Attis, and Osiris, and for this book research and for whatever. We may even want to like record these. I thought about us making an audiobook or something like that if we wanted to do that. But I went on eBay and they're all like $1,500, $1,800. And I've been trying to like lowball some bids. And I put one in yesterday thinking, no, it's not going to pass. I put in a bid for like $200 and I got it. I got it like instantaneously. So I'm going to get,
it's meant to be
yeah,
yours.
I can't believe I'm spending $200 on a set of books. Like I'm pretty thrifty, but my low ball got accepted. So I guess someone was pretty desperate to get rid of them. Cause who's going to drop like, $1,800 for this stuff when you can get the PDFs online. So I'm going to have them soon and they're probably going to sit on my shelf forever. And I don't know when I'm going to read it. Cause we've been doing this for over a year.
Wow, man.
Yeah, this
Wow.
could keep you busy for a decade.
Rest of my life. But at least I'll be able to consult this.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
I think my legacy is like tied up in this book now. So
maybe so, and I'm interested to get access to more of the Christian analysis because that's something that's been a
yeah,
little shrouded because of the cultural climate.
yeah, the controversy.
Yeah.
The that's what my understanding is there's just a lot more data points in this. So who knows what things will jump out when I read it. But yeah, it, that there's the hubbub was really he went to greater lengths to connect this to Jesus Christ. And you can even see it in our abridged versions. He's like, an Osiris died so that we could live, and they fed off his body and stuff like that. It's like an elbow to the ribs, like, duh, like, see Osiris as Jesus. Like, it's not really that subtle. I can't.
No.
Fascinating to me is that there were enough people reading this book 100 years ago that it caused a controversy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is interesting.
yeah. Like, what a problem to have. Oh no, people are reading cultural anthropology and comparative mythology and actually having strong feelings about it. And today
Mhm.
it's like, what? Why are you reading that, you weirdo? you, sh- you shouldn't be reading. You should be TikTok doom scrolling.
Yeah, I think the literacy rates, if they're to
Yeah.
be believed, speak for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Not good.
So there we go. Also, I would like to make an audiobook of Plutarch on Isis and Osiris. I thought about us maybe getting
Mhm.
together and just having like a reading session on that. Although I think there's been recordings of it already done. So much of what Frazer draws from is from Plutarch.
Yeah.
So things feels like it's something we should know. Oh, this is in the bottom right hand corner. This is Osiris. I want to say Aya. I didn't look up the pronunciation of it, but this is Osiris with the moon over his head. And this kind of shows how the Egyptians started to associate him. So of course, if JFK is going to be Osiris, he's going to go to the moon because that's what Osiris does. He's Osiris Ah. Duh. All right.
Yeah, it's the strongest one by
Yeah,
far.
it's pretty strong. It'll be interesting. You know, I'm almost at 900 slides. It's like, what's it going to be like when we're done with this project? And I put them all in their different buckets. Like, I'm like, how much will I actually have to talk about each? It's going to be a lot. It's easy to forget some of the things we've talked about. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. This was a fun one to put together. So I was just like, you know what? Let's find all the Egyptian clues to the Apollo missions that we can. And I like doing these little games. It's a great little puzzle. It's fun. And the first thing that came to mind, Egypt, was Farouk El-Baz. And this has always sort of been perplexing to me for a variety of reasons. But they brought in this Egyptian like lunar geologist or whatever his title was, um, and he is the one who was responsible for choosing where the missions would land, their different sites. And I have no problem with this. I mean, he's probably the most uh, accomplished person to do this. But it's so strange when we think about the rockets themselves being like these obelisk shrines, right? Um, and then we have an Egyptian who's, by the way, his nickname, they called him the king as a reference to the pharaohs, right? That was his nickname. And then he's the one who's responsible for guiding these obelisks to their landing spots on the moon, right? Like, that's maybe there was no one else qualified for this job in all of America, but it seems very interesting, very synchronistic that an Egyptian would be in charge of this. Still alive. I think he's in North
Yeah.
Carolina at this point, but I found that to be very intriguing. So much so that, in fact, you see, I believe this is Apollo 17. There's a landing site, and one of the landing sites, some of the features that they came near were called Isis and Osiris. Now, I don't think there was a lot of hubbub that was made about this because I believe the IAU or whatever it's called. I get that confused with 2001 if it was the IAU or the IAE, but I think they named it in the mid 70s after Osiris and Isis. And what was working knowledge of or not at the time is a little murky. But of course, there you see it's right next to Mary, right? You see Isis and Mary are right next door to each other, you know? So, and maybe that's because it's Robert. Maybe there's a different Mary that this is named after. But regardless, I think archetypally it's the same. So that's interesting. Apollo
Yeah.
15. Apollo 15 was heavily Egyptian. I think their landing module was named Falcon, and they had you can see here. I believe this is Dave Scott with the Falcon. He's I believe he was a real life falconer, right? And this was the mission where they did the gravity test, where they dropped the Falcon feather with a hammer. And this is a clear allusion to the weighing of the soul in the afterlife, right? Your heart being the same as a feather. And the falcon feather is Horus. Horus was related to the falcon. So it's like, oh, not only are you getting the weighing aspect of these in the afterlife, but you're getting the falcon connection to Horus. And as I mentioned earlier, there was these geological features called the Blair Cuspids that I believe they found in 1966. And there was a lot of speculation about whether or not this was the remnant of a civilization. And so there were a lot of people in like pulp magazines and pseudoscience and fringe magazines, whatever pseudoscience is, that's a whole rabbit trail. But they were speculating about whether or not there were like these ancient Egyptian artifacts on the moon. And I guess they have some sort of explanation for them now that it's like the light hitting certain rock formations at a certain way that give it this, but it's a kind of a persistent curiosity in what's it called? Is it xeno archaeology? I think that's the discipline or whatever. It's kind of like the people who believe there's like a face on Mars, like or something like that. That there that in this feeds into the whole panspermia idea that like our civilization was like seeded by alien races. So those are just some. I'm sure there are much more, but when you put them all together, I feel like it's pretty striking. You know, especially the falcon feather hammer drop. Like, I mean, they could have done something else maybe, but they really wanted to get this falcon in there, and they really wanted to have that theme. And it's hard to deny that this isn't a callback to this Egyptian mythology, in my opinion. So, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I feel like an eagle would be more in the American canon.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that would do away with it because I mean, it'd still be a feather. And I guess that's like kind of the way these vacuum experiments have always been like communicated to us. Like you drop a feather in a environment without air resistance and a cannonball, they'll fall at the same. I think I've seen that experiment replicated somewhere. But yeah, it's like, look, we're really on the moon. They really hit the ground at the same time.
I mean, this Farouk al-Baz, his name itself means Farouk the Falcon.
No, it
So
does not.
it does. It does.
No, it
Baz
does
means
not.
falcon.
Stop it.
I mean, okay. So it's like
I
he's a
know.
falcon flying over the
I'm in
moon.
disbelief. It means the hawk or the falcon. Oh my god. Did you know that off the top of your head, or did you look it up?
Yeah, it's a borrowed word from that. We use that same word
Do you really?
for. Yeah.
That's crazy. I wonder what Farouk means. Keep going.
I mean, just that. I imagine like him being a falcon. He's flying over the moon, like that camera in The Shining, and he's like marking out the places where it's gonna. These are the landing points for us. So it's like a falcon. Uh, I mean, just that. That's that imagery. I like you have given us the bird's eye view. Literally, the bird's eye view. This photograph is a bird's eye view, and he's like planning his things from a bird's eye view, and his name is a bird.
Oh yeah, it's the
I was like,
onomancy. This is perfect. Thank you, Ostic. Farouk means one who distinguishes truth from falsehood. And I guess this makes a little bit more sense why they called him the king, because King Farouk I was the last reigning king of Egypt. So that's why they call him the king, because they having been these guys were alive at some point in their lives. They must have been teenagers or something like that, or 20s. And they must have known about King Farouk of Egypt, the king. That's crazy.
yeah.
This reality is so crazy. I should mention this. This is kind of an interesting little sci-fi dork factoid or trivia tidbit. The shuttles, like the little, I don't know if you ever watched like Star Trek: The Next Generation. The little shuttles are called Elbaz shuttles or whatever. Jordan, you might want to pull one of those up on the screen if you can. It's not really that important, but it kind of just represents this idea of where does science fact and science fiction begin and end? Because there's this whole thing where they've, over the years, NASA has like brought in Star Trek and Star Wars into the mission. One of the most interesting ones is that they actually had, I don't know if you know this, they actually had an actress who was on Star Trek become an astronaut. This black woman. So they just moved her from the show and put her on the space station or shuttle or something.
Katy
Did you
Perry
find
also
anything?
went to space.
Who went to space? Yes,
Katy Perry.
Mae Jemison. She's a very pretty woman. So
I don't know how to spell what you said, so I'm
Farouk
striking out.
Elabaz or
Yeah.
Elbaz from Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. My Star Trek.
Yeah, you were a Trekkie, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't remember. There we go. Let's see.
And I think during the shuttle program, they had the cast of like one of the Star Trek movies like show up for the Enterprise. Yeah, they named one of the space shuttles the Enterprise. There's the Elbaz little shuttle from the Next Generation.
TNG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But during the 80s, they had the Enterprise space shuttle, and there's like a picture of like Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner and Scotty and everything like at Kennedy with the. Can you bring that one up? The Enterprise space shuttle and Star Trek. Yeah, I mean it's just really psychedelic. I'm not judging anybody, but it's this reality. I do not know what I would do if I actually took LSD or shrooms or something like that. Like I would lose my mind. This stuff makes me lose my mind.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, what are we supposed to see?
This is
all of these.
This is the cast of Star Trek. This shuttle is called the Enterprise Shuttle.
Struggle.
And the spaceship that they piloted in Star Trek was called the Enterprise. The point I'm trying to make here is they adopt sci-fi things for the real life missions.
Right.
Like they adopted the Star Trek actress to become an astronaut, and they adopted the Enterprise for the shuttle program. It's just bizarre. And you can more innocently say, oh, well, the guys who work in engineering in these programs are big sci-fi fans and they're just paying homage. That would be a normal person response.
Yeah, that would have been my response as well earlier.
There's so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so trippy. And they're like the I think it's like the hatch for the space station looks like the Millennial Falcon hatch in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just tons. There's so much, but that's a digression. I'll let somebody else cover that. Is that Scotty in the cockpit there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nichelle Nichols. I don't know if it's Scotty. Maybe, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's proceed.
Okay.
It's a very chill podcast today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's that frantic energy?
I didn't have any caffeine today, so yeah.
Why don't you read this?
Okay. Let me pull up the.
I
Okay.
obviously have had too much caffeine.
Interpreting the Apollo missions through the dual lens of Ra and Horus transforms a Cold War race into a profound cosmic ritual, blending themes of divine conquest and spiritual restoration. From the Ra perspective, the Saturn V acts as a solar bark, representing the supreme sun god's fiery authority as it navigates the chaotic void of space. The duet, to maintain cosmic order. Conversely, the Horus perspective frames the journey as a mission of healing, where the astronauts act as the living Horus returning to restore the lunar eye and fulfill the legacy of a martyred predecessor, Osiris or JFK. These narratives eventually converge in the figure of Ra Horakti, symbolizing a godlike synthesis of power and wisdom that allowed humanity to plant its scepter on the horizon of a new world.
Yeah, I don't know really how I shake out on this. I mean, both could really be in play, but there's obviously the Ra elements with the pillar. We've talked about this being a petrified ray of the sun, but clearly with all the Falcon imagery, it's hard not to see this associating with Horus. And maybe it ultimately culminates in the merger with this Ra Haraktai character. And I think we can go to the next slide if you want, Jordan. I think that's kind of what I have here is pretty much what Jordan had to say. I kind of broke it down to a chart. Which one do you choose here? I'm up for exploring it. I don't have a great enough handle on all of this to have definitive feelings about it, but I think it's a start. So we can go to the next slide too. I might need a snack break for a few minutes.
Yeah, do you want to do this slide or take a break first?
Let's take 5.
Okay. I'll
right.
see you soon.
All right.
Cool. The funerary obelisk serves as the static ancestor for the Saturn V, both functioning as architectural bridges between a fallen earthly king and the eternal solar realm. Just as the ancient Benben stone provided a stable platform for the soul to rise from the waters of chaos, the Saturn V acted as a 363-foot technological obelisk of terrestrial order designed to pierce the watery void of space. By mirroring the petrified rays of the sun, these monuments tethered the martyred vision of Osiris to the life giving power of Ra, symbolically restoring the king's lost creative potency so his son, Horus or Apollo, could be born. Ultimately, the Kennedy Space Center emerges as a modern great necropolis where kinetic obelisks are built to transform the scattered history of a nation into a successful ascent toward the lunar afterlife.
Yeah, I like that expression, kinetic obelisk. I mean, really, what I did here is, I fed this idea into Google Gemini. I was like, because it really is striking to me when you go around all these cemeteries around here. Although you could say that's kind of funny in and of itself to compare a seminary to a cemetery, but I digress. you see all these obelisks, and it's like, really, where did this idea come from? Like, why? This is a Christian country in America. Why are all these obelisks here? And there's a story about this Egypt mania, or that took hold of the country in like the 19th century. I'm sure there's its own very interesting story to know about why we suddenly became so fascinated with Egypt in the 19th century. But thinking about it like that, that people have these obelisks over their individual graves in the graveyards around here. It's an idea about resurrection, and the, like you're saying, the restoration through Ra of the life-giving force, and the climbing of this pillar to have that unification with the solar power. And when you think about the fact that these rockets launch from Kennedy Space Center, I think it's intriguing. It kind of takes on a different shape about what that Space Center actually is. We've looked at this in regards to, I think we've looked at this in regards to the Dallas Memorial, the shape of the grain container that is the Philip Johnson Memorial. And there's a little bit of that going on here as well with because it was renamed or named such like shortly after, I believe it like within days, if not the next day after Kennedy's assassination. So the timing of it was pretty crazy. It was like no delay here. It was like ready to go. And I don't know. I don't really know what I'm trying to say here outside of like that's in my vivid archetypal contacts that I'm wearing. That's kind of what I'm seeing. I thought the rendering here that Google Gemini did was pretty good and
Yeah.
pretty real. I mean, I could imagine that maybe you could like kind of recreate the scene somehow if you had the right angle and the access to the right property near the Kennedy Space Center.
I mean, just that since we've been discussing it for a long time, it seems to come become very obvious to us. But like, if you tell this thing, the whole thing, that this is about resurrection ritual for President Kennedy, he was slain, and this whole thing is about that. Like, they would be very hard pressed to, like, they would push have some pushback. But now, like, this idea seems so natural to me after reading this book, and like, I think that's the disconnect with like a general public who does not understand this, and like people who are in the know. Now it feels less hand wavy and hokey pokey now. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid, and I don't think you have to have like add like disclaimers like this is what I'm seeing. I think this is what I'm seeing too. So like you have at least, maybe Jordan sees that as well. So it's like at least three people there seeing the same thing. So you're not
Okay.
crazy. So
We have
I've
a
just
shared delusion.
yeah, I've initiated you into my cult. But it does raise very interesting questions about how we build consensus reality, and how consensus reality can limit us from the things that are in front of our faces the entire time. Um, this is Osik probably has a different perspective on it, but is perhaps limited in different ways. Like, for instance, if Jordan and I were to come over to India, we might see things that you would not see, and you see things about America that we can't see because we were born and bred and propagandized in it. It's like what's going on with Easter today. Most Americans don't find it problematic at all to associate chicks and eggs and rabbits and things like that with the resurrection of Christ. They couldn't even tell you why they're there. You know, they just go, we always kind of have been. And Jordan and I were talking about this last night. It's like, why have no pastors like made this clear? The pastors should haven't gone through the seminaries, to tie it back around to my verbal flood, my verbal flub here. Why have the pastors not elucidated this? Why do the pastors
Well,
allow this to come into the church? Why do the pastors allow Christmas trees there? Um,
that kind of spills over too into these offshoots that are considered very radical and have their own problems, right? Like there are some smaller groups that say no to all of these things, but it becomes very controlling and it has its own distortions. But
oh
I
yeah,
agree, if you're going to be internally consistent with the doctrine, we would expect something very different.
it really I mean, you don't have to become like a psychopathic like cult leader to be like, yeah, we're not going to do the whole Easter egg hunt at Christmas anymore or
I
at
agree.
Easter
I'm just saying
anymore.
those are the examples that I have. Like
Yeah.
it's rare to see more of a middle path taken on this topic by anyone within the religion.
Yeah. It
I
is
think,
rare.
this I wouldn't consider myself in the religion because there's just too many little things that I can't just go along with, and this is one of them. Are we going to be
Yeah.
honest about what's happening or not? I'm not anti having fun with kids and hiding Easter eggs, but like I agree. Having a deeper conversation and understanding about what this is representing.
I
Well,
mean,
something I should add here is
just
that there's another there. Well, all right, go ahead, Alsik. Yeah, go ahead.
okay. You please remember what you were trying to say. I was thinking
Yeah.
like, I think you guys have this pushback because you think as something existing in reality as being something that was done to undermine your religion, right? Or
Oh,
is it
I
not?
wouldn't say that it was done to undermine the religion because these things are older.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
what we're talking about is older than mainstream modern Christianity. But there's not an acknowledgement within most of these churches that these traditions are worshiping other entities, basically.
It's like bad hygiene. It's like
But
you
also,
kind
like,
of
I'm not really Christian. Like,
well,
I don't necessarily, yeah. So
I
that's,
am, and it's like the pastor is like the dentist who's like not like doing a thorough job. Like, yeah,
But
we got to
like
keep this stuff out.
Dr. Luke, uh, I think like you're one of the hardliners, right? In that sense, like we have to stick. I mean, you don't scoff. I understand. Like
Yeah.
so,
I
so
love it.
it's
I love
like
it.
no, that's fine. But like you know when to draw your boundaries. But like if something is, I think I'm trying to analyze from your perspective. You think as something being here, like in your reality, that is not explained by Christianity. That is like that has some origin from maybe a older, maybe a pagan religion or something, that you think is like a contamination of like pure Christianity. Is that so? Right.
Yeah.
So like,
Well, within their religion, Gnostic, they talk a lot about only worshiping the one true God and only really worshiping Jesus. And so this would be a deviation from that. I'm not commenting on if that is right, wrong, but it's not an internally consistent position.
And it's also it's not just a contamination of the religion, it's a contamination of science, clearly. Okay. It's a contamination of politics. It's really a contamination of everything.
Tell me more.
Now,
What do you mean?
what's that?
Tell me more.
We gotta watch the clock here. That's a
I know,
whole
I'm the
other
problem.
issue.
Yeah, I'm the one that
Uh,
has to go.
but the alternative that one could say about this, and what I was trying to say earlier, and I probably have cut off Ostic again. I'm sorry, but going through the wasteland and preparing that to talk about that with Bayes, the T.S. Eliot poem, is that Eliot himself was very familiar with the Golden Bough. And at a certain point, I have become untroubled with this because I know I can't change it. Like I have spent the better part of a decade, like till I turn blue in the face, trying to persuade people. And I'm surrounded by NPCs. Okay. It's not going to happen. Okay. um, but I think the way that Eliot made his piece about this via the Golden Bough was to see all these other pagan forerunners of these dying and rising gods as being, and I've explained, I've expressed a similar sort of view in earlier podcasts, that it was a yearning for that true instantiation of the death and resurrection of Jesus before he actually appeared on earth. It was like kind of a, like the collective was sort of yearning for it and was finding ways to project it upon nature. And then when it finally actually had it, it culminated. Now that raises another interesting position about, well, do we forget it and we've gone back to those vegetative rites and rituals, Or are we transcending it into another form? Are we yearning for a new form of Christ or something like that? Like, are we yearning for the resurrection of the general population? Like, where is this obsession with projecting these archetypes onto reality coming from?
That's what we've been studying, right? So,
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah,
only thing that I would disagree with you is like this Christ being like a superior thing. I think like
yeah,
with that things like Christ is a manifestation of this model that we already had, and then Christianity came at a time when we needed it, and then it had a profound effect on the lives of people, and it changed their lives. So sometimes I think about that, but like there are things in this world we cannot really control. So Christ represents the ideal, I think, in your mind. There's an ideal thing in this world that is Christ, right? So, but like when this ideal falls apart and it still has that same structure as Christianity, but like it's expressing itself in a negative way or something, then you're like, oh, this is like contamination of Christianity. This is not Christ or something. But like those archetypes, those powers, they were looking for a figure to,
yeah,
to build around. It's like slime mold. They're trying to build
yeah,
something towards it. That's what I feel. It's like, but I get your point as well. It's like if I was an atheist and I would have like encountered Christ, like knowing that Christ, like he fits into that mold of a society that was already yearning for it. That it's kind of peaceful because like it's not a break off point. It's a continuation, and it's like it's not something that's alien that's implanted into us. It's a part of us. It
yeah.
makes it very personal. Just that devotion to Christ. That's what I feel.
Yeah, and I think it's beautiful the way you've said it. I mean, I'm I have a lot of conflicting feelings about all of this, which is its own. My relationship with the Christian faith is, I would say, in some ways, like studying all this stuff has like it is exhausting, especially when you start seeing how it's all syncretized and been bleeding into current practice, and then at the same time you see like how very clearly the Christ model was present and stuff like that with us Osiris, that Frazer is pointing out. But that's a whole other issue. So let's go to the next slide. A worthwhile exploration if we were just shooting the shit, but I've got to get through the material. So Jordan, I think you're reading for this one, the Temple of
All right.
Dendera,
All right.
which is different from the Temple of Dendera. I thought, the one that Jackie rescued. This is different, so don't get them confused.
Thank you for pointing that out because I was
Mm-hmm.
combining them.
Yeah.
The funeral rites of Osiris, as performed during his major festival across 16 provinces of Egypt, are detailed in a lengthy Ptolemaic period inscription carved on the walls of his temple at Dendera, or in ancient Tentyra, a town in Upper Egypt on the west bank of the Nile, about 40 miles north of Thebes. Although the inscription provides remarkably detailed information on many aspects of the ceremonies, its confused arrangement and frequently obscure language make it difficult to reconstruct a clear and coherent overall picture of the rites. The document also reveals that the ceremonies varied from one city to another. For instance, the ritual at Abydos differed from that at Bucyrus. Rather than delving into every local variation, Frazer plans to outline only the principal feature of the festival that can be established with reasonable clarity.
Thank you. Well, I think it probably would be more helpful if I had some sort of map that charted exactly where the
Yeah.
Temple of Dendera was and where the Temple of Dendera was. And, these names, they tend to flow together. But here's an image, a painting that was done by David Roberts, the Temple of Dendera, which I thought was great. I mean, there were other options, but they just like look like ruins, and I didn't know what was especially important about the ruins that we have images of. So I thought this was more majestic to include this. So we can start going through some of those rites if you want to go to the next slide, Jordan. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, do I have you reading here, or do I have us talking
Oh,
about I think I'm, yeah, you go ahead and read that, and we'll look at the calendar.
all right. The Osiris festival in the month of Coag lasted 18 days from the 12th to the 13th and dramatized the god's three successive states: dead, as Chenta meant, dismembered, as Osiris Sep, and reconstituted as Sokurai, through a series of elaborate rites. Small mummy shaped images of Osiris were molded from sand, vegetable earth, or corn, sometimes mixed with incense, painted yellow on the face and green on the cheekbones, and cast in a pure gold mold depicting him as a mummified figure wearing Egypt's white crown. The festival began on the 12th with a symbolic plowing and sowing ceremony using two black cows yoked to a tamarisk wood plow with a black copper share, where a boy scattered barley, spelt, and flax seeds, while the chief priest recited ritual texts. At Busiris on the 20th, sand and barley were placed in the god's garden, a large flower pot like vessel watered with fresh inundation water in the presence of the cow goddess Shenти, who is represented by a gilt sycamore wood cow containing a headless human figure, allowing the barley to sprout as a symbol of Osiris's resurrection. On the 22nd, 34 images of Osiris and other deities sailed in 34 illuminated papyrus boats lit by the 365 lamps. On the 24th, after sunset, a new mulberry wood coffin effigy was buried, while the previous year's effigy was exhumed and placed on sycamore boughs. The rites concluded on the 30th when the coffined effigy was reverently laid on a bed of sand in subterranean sepulchre beneath persea trees, entered from the west and exited from the east, leaving the god to rest until the next year.
Thank you. So I think that it pretty effectively lays out everything here. I mean, we have the mummy here in the top right hand corner that you can see is representative of what they were using at that time. I don't really have much of a problem with any of this. I think it's very interesting that it matches up with the Christmas time that we have here in the West, and this raises very interesting matters in regards to this Apollo 8 mission that I talked about, where they celebrated Christmas on the moon. They actually went around the moon. I mean, Christmas at the moon is probably the better way to talk about this. We do, so this could be something about the resurrection of Osiris, but also we get this from Plutarch. Let me see if I can put my glasses on here and read this. This is why I want to. Oh, I can't. I'm going to get around my mic. Thus we shall attack the many boring people who find pleasure in associating the activities of these gods with the seasonal changes of the atmosphere or with the growth, sowing, and plowing of crops, and who say that Osiris is being buried when the corn is sown and hidden in the earth, and that he lives again and reappears when it begins to sprout. For this reason, it is said that Isis, when she was aware of her being pregnant, put on a protective amulet on the 6th day of Phaliphi, and at the winter solstice gave birth to Harpocrates, Horus, imperfect and prematurely born, amid plants that burgeoned and sprouted before the season. And they are said to celebrate the days of her confinement after the spring equinox. So that's from Plutarch's on Isis and Osiris, and where we get the idea that Horus was born around Christmas, and to connect that to the Apollo missions. So that's one of the sources for that. Yeah.
You want to
Just
know
one.
something? Oh, go
Sure.
ahead.
Okay, please remember your question. Okay, the one thing I wanted to ask was like he's saying, thus we shall attack the many boring people who find pleasure in associating the activities of gods with the seasonal changes of atmosphere. Is that like he's against that idea that gods do not like associate with the seasons. Like I thought like he'll elaborate on that, but then it says that he's just describing like our thesis that these are associated with seasonal changes. I was just wondering like if you read it or you found it. I'll read it myself. Okay,
I
okay,
think
fine.
that's why we need to read it collectively to get a better sense of that. I just found that one passage and went with it. So I need more.
Yeah, yeah,
To be
sure, sure.
honest, I need a crumb of context.
So it's a great
Yeah.
question.
It's a great
So
question. I need to actually read it, not just lift it from the text. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jordan was saying
Well, we
something.
talked a little. Yeah, we talked about this with the. I probably should have put the Artemis slide here to get a little bit closer to that, but um, yeah, we've talked about some of these subjects. But look, it does. Oh, what I want to say here. It is very interesting to me. I don't know what to make of this. So we have JFK dying in November, which would have been the 8th there on with these Osiris festivals. And then we have Apollo 8 going to the moon during Koyak, right? Where these rites that we're talking about occur, which broadly happen about the same time. Okay. The problem is there's 5 years apart. And what we're supposed to do with those 5 years, right? So we have JFK gets killed in 63 during the 8th year festival. And then we have Apollo 8 happens during Koyak. Like, are we supposed to say, like, during those 5 years, that's when we were like we were like trying to reconstitute the the pillar that would allow Horus to be born with Isis? Is that
The
like,
World's Fair was there. So
yeah,
that's a major event.
it's kind of like, were we searching for the pillar? I
Also,
think
like
that
the
might be how we have to kind of talk about it, because it would be so much tighter if you just say, okay, Kenny got killed, but we're still going to the moon. So we should have gone to the moon in December of 63, but we weren't ready yet. And it's one of these things. It's like, Luke, if this was really happening, don't you think it would have been a little neater, a little tidier? It's
it takes
there,
time.
but it's not necessarily the frame that we want it to be.
I think we'll find more things if we look into those years. I think we don't
Yeah.
look into them too often. I'm sure there will be more things. Even the Beatles in their latest documentary about 64, like when they visited America, they said that we were there to like help people of America to, not mourn Kennedy because Kennedy had been shot. That's what they said. So they have this whole self-image of themselves, or like people have it like, okay, when the Beatles arrived, then the 60s arrived in America, and then we had, everything else that followed. All this, you're not even picking up on the psychedelic movement that began. I think even before that, it started happening. I think they were trying to like, there's literal consciousness change. We've been talking about consciousness change, so it's like it was going around that time all over the country, I think.
It's interesting. I'm thinking, because we haven't really talked about the Beatles so much in regards to like the space race and all that, but they played like their big, that Shea Stadium show was a big deal. They played on uh, August 15th, 1965, and then I guess again on August 23rd, 1966. I'm sure you know the Shea Stadium show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I believe Shea Stadium is at the World Fair site. I think it is. Yeah. So we've talked about the role that the World's Fair played in the establishment of the Apollo program, but there are a lot of things to follow up on. The Beatles playing there in 65, I think I don't think we've given enough attention to that.
Yeah. That's the highlight reel of for American tours. I think they did not come back to America after that to
Was
play.
that the one where they were like, oh, we can't play live anymore because there's just too
Yeah,
many
yeah.
screaming fans and we can't hear ourselves sing and stuff?
Yeah, that, and then they were also getting lousy playing the same songs. And like that was a cover. that they threw out to the world, like, oh, we can't even hear. It's like praising themselves while like retreating to the recording studios. Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to look at the Beatles some more with this. Yeah.
Okay, I have a slight derailment, but it's good. When we were reading through that last slide, is there anything else though I'm interrupting?
I don't think so. I feel pretty satisfied with this slide.
So I was just thinking about, okay, these rituals where we have like the barley and the flax and everything like growing out, and it represents Osiris. And it's not that it's growing out of the mummy, but they're making these like little statues or whatever, effigies of Osiris. And I was like, oh, this makes me think about chia pets.
Okay.
And
I bet
here's
there's a JFK chia pet.
I tried searching quickly. I couldn't find it. There's a Donald Trump one. There's definitely a Donald Trump one. But so you can purchase this one right now if you would like. But what was super interesting is this article in National Geographic is talking about the religious roots of the chia pet. So
Go on.
before it was just known as, this kitschy toy you could buy on off of TV in the 80s and the 90s, and you still can.
Yeah.
It was part of some, like, they're creating them for altars leading up to Easter.
Really?
Yeah, which is exactly what we're talking about today. So I just thought this was too good not to
Wait,
share.
where did they come from?
Mexico is what this article is talking about.
That's
Maybe this
fascinating.
is in other places too, but it feels like a merging, right? Like,
Yeah.
it feels like an expression of the Osiris rituals with the plant, because in the reading with Frazer, we're talking about they're planting it in Osiris's garden, which was like a pot, right? And
Yeah.
it's representative, but this is, it's growing out of the animal. And today we have it growing out of Donald Trump as it's merged with
Hmm.
the American mythology. It's
I
crazy.
like it. I saw that there were. I was looking at them. There's an Abraham Lincoln one, which would be, given what we've talked about
Ooh,
already,
that would be more
and
relevant.
Lincoln dying on Good Friday. Like, that's very psychedelic. There's
Yeah.
also Alf ones. I'm partial to the
There's all
Alf chia
sorts of
pet.
things. Yeah, you can find, let's see what's patriotic.
Yeah,
We
the
got
Joe
Joe
Biden
Biden.
one's
Yeah.
interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. They're really catering to anyone and everyone who would be interested in a chia pet. This is not a
Yeah,
political statement, but yeah, The Simpsons, all sorts
that's
of
cool.
stuff.
That's
Golden
cool.
Girls. I think we need a Golden Girls chia pet. These are,
I'm gonna get the Lincoln one.
yeah, if you can find it, that'd be
All right,
great.
that's great.
Yeah, I thought it was a good find.
It is a good one. Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
This is just fun, like treasure hunting stuff. So I've been really getting into reading these. I don't know exactly what to call these. They're like books. They're like magazines. It's a little bit of a break from the heavier reading that I do. But right now I'm reading Thayer's Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, and I find like a lot of like great discoveries are in these texts. They put together often by times. We looked at the Torches Past by the AP that put that out after the Kennedy funeral, and this one is great. There's a lot of stuff like by Time Life Books and Nat Geo. So I'm really into this, and I've just found like not lots of little tidbits that you don't find anywhere else. And so I'm searching for like all the Egyptian things that surround Apollo and Jackie and Jack. And this led me back to Blackjack, her father, Blackjack Bouvier, John Vernal Bouvier III. The reason why they called him Blackjack, and I did not realize this, I thought it was like just a clever thing, but there was really intentionality to it, is that apparently in person, he was really quite dark. He was, I guess, swarthy or whatever the word is, and you can look into his heritage, and there is some evidence that suggests that he may have been had like North African connections, Moorish, Moroccan ancestry. Although I think in general that is not entertained by mainstream people who do like the ancestor diagramming or whatever. But that's how he got his name, and it's exemplified. It jumped out at me with this passage from the Thayer text. Little 2-year-old Jacqueline Bouvier toddled to the show platform. She was really into horses, which we'll look at in a second, and exhibited with great pride a wee Scotch terrier of about her own size. The scribe was obviously feminine, for she added, Mr. Bouvier is so deeply tanned with East Hampton sunburn that he much resembles one of those handsome Egyptians you see careening along in their Rolls-Royce cars in Cairo in the land of the Nile. So we've had this conversation about when did Jackie come in contact with ISIS material. She, as an editor, we know for certain she put out a couple books that dealt specifically with the ISIS goddess. And we've talked about her work on the Moonwalker book, which seems to clearly have Horus imagery on the cover as well. I would not be surprised if she took an interest in this at a very young age because people were saying her father looked Egyptian. I don't know. I've speculated that maybe she would have come in contact with these ideas when she was in college. I think she went to Vassar and then finished at George Washington. So maybe when she was studying French and art history, she may have come in contact, but it may have been at an even younger date, given that people would call her father this. He also had a nickname, I believe it was Black Orchid was one of the names that they gave him, or the Sheik. So there was a constant sort of association in her universe that this man was Middle Eastern or perhaps Egyptian. So I found that to be fascinating. And there's more. So we can keep going with the Egyptian imagery. These are kind of a series of slides, Jordan. I mentioned this at the outset. Here's Jackie in 1962 with her sister, I believe, Lee Radziwill. I think that's how you say her name. But they were on the back of a camel in Pakistan. Pakistan is not Egypt, but still the symbol of of a camel, and at least in my mind, is very Egyptian. But then later on in 1974, she took that trip to Aswan, Egypt, to overlook the Temple of Dendera that her and Jack were working on saving from the dam project. And so we do have her on a camel in Egypt. I don't know. Is it what? Would you take a look at these images and just be like, oh, for sure, she's ISIS because she's associated with a camel? No. But I think the totality of it starts to build a picture where these symbols are kind of circulating around. And we may want to talk about this for a second. What slide's next, Jordan? I don't know. I don't remember. I guess I'll say this. And then we'll take a little bit of a pause. So through Frazer, we looked at how ISIS is connected to cows, not horses, which is is the point of this slide. Jackie, as we saw 2 slides ago, was an equestrian at an incredibly young age. She was riding horses at 2. At age 2, she was saddling up on horses. I don't know how good she was. Apparently, she was naturally gifted at this. And throughout her whole life, she had an abiding affection for horses. It was a big part of her identity. Even during the White House, I believe they would occasionally bring horses out onto the White House lawn. I think I've showed those images where it kind of looks like King Arthur with his court there with all the horses. There is some evidence, as indicated here in this paper by Jeffrey T. Winkle, called Epona Salvatrix, Isis and the Horse Goddess in Apuleius's Metamorphoses. And I think there's a story about how the Isis figure gets changed into a horse or something like that. I'm sketchy on the details. I should have brushed up on it before this slide. The point of it is that there was a Roman horse goddess, Epona, who was considered to be one of these mother goddess figures. And over time, through synchronization, the cows that were associated with Isis gradually got replaced with horses. And so you could say that this Epona figure is also an Isis figure, which I think tracks with how much you see Jackie surrounded by horses. Do I think she, at age 2, started to befriend horses because she knew she was Isis? Absolutely not. I think this is one of those theophonic eruptions or archetypal eruptions into reality. Okay, I think that's what we're likely looking at here. Something else I found out during this process of investigation is that we've looked at the strangeness of Jackie's father being named Blackjack, and then the riderless horse at JFK's funeral is named Blackjack. And I'm sure that was not lost on her. I think there are all sorts of interpretive things that we could say about this. I mean, for starters, Epona, as this horse goddess, she had the ability to transform herself into a horse, specifically a white mare, which is interesting with this picture about her riding on the bareback of this riding bareback on this horse up here, this white horse up here. So, could somehow like Jackie as the Epona archetype, like transform to this horse that is a psychopomp that leads JFK into the underworld or the afterlife? I don't know. Or is this like something about the father imagery, like being returned to the source of the mother goddess because that was her father, and now the father is gone and now she's in control? I don't know, but I found this all to be highly fascinating. So we've gone over 3 slides here, and I'll pause and let the panel weigh in on any of it.
I feel like these speak for themselves.
I think they kind of do. Ostic, how
Yeah.
did they strike you? Did you like any of it more or less? Do you think some of this is viable?
I mean, even if it was, but I don't see it connecting to the other things that we've discussed in a way that's like groundbreaking. Like
Yeah.
it's like we have this whole Sergeant Pepper's poster, and there's another poster here at the back. So it kind of felt like that. I mean, don't be disappointed. It's like it's not much to write home about in that way.
Yeah,
Like it's not.
sometimes there are revelatory breakthroughs, and then it's just like, oh yeah, just more evidence, like more. It's there should be a way that we distinguish this. It's like there's an archetypal observation that kind of fits with a paradigm that we're already looking at, and something that like really induces that aha eureka moment. I feel like this Epona Salvatrix, if that's how you say it, figure, I felt like that kind of tickled my mind in the right way.
How did it do
And
it?
what's that?
How? Like if it resonated with you, then like you could explain better than us. Like
Well, I mean, I think I did. I mean, just the fact that
okay,
the cows that are associated with ISIS got replaced with the POTUS horses.
And
And just, I guess I look at so many images of Jackie and horses, it kind of pops out and becomes more 3-dimensional and makes sense to me. Not to
yeah.
mention Jackie's named after her father. Jackie, she's Jacqueline. She is
Oh,
that, and maybe that I left that detail out. I didn't say that enough. Like
she's named after Blackjack.
she's named after Blackjack, and then Blackjack becomes the riderless horse at the funeral. So there's like this name
okay,
identity
okay.
with it.
Now
I
it's
don't
getting
know.
And
there.
Trying to
locally,
impress Ostic here.
I think locally it's very interesting because this is an equestrian town. It is
Yeah.
known for horses specifically. Jackie lived here because of the horse element. And so there's all these like local photography books that are all about her and the horses. And so just her individual lore is very wrapped up in the horse. So
Yeah.
being able to connect that to Isis is interesting. But I'm not sure that if you weren't learning about her like from the ground up from that perspective, it would be as impressive. But the blackjack thing is very weird to me.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I can't hit a home run every time, guys. Sometimes there's just stuff is interesting. I don't know.
There's
The
Like,
thing
so
is that
much.
with rich women, I know they're like horse girls in general. So that's why it did not strike me as much. I'm like, okay, she's rich. She's gonna like
Mm.
horses. Like, why not? But like
what
now it
about her
kind of
what
feels,
about her father being mistaken for an Egyptian? Come on, that's interesting.
yeah, that's
You've got to
interesting,
admit
right?
that's interesting.
It is, man. If I
I'm
don't say it,
trying here, dude.
We're like
know
making you
it,
defend it
know it in your
now.
heart.
Okay. All right, we have 2 more slides and we have 13 minutes. So let's finish this off. Okay. Jordan, do I have you reading something for this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, go
In the
for it.
Osirian mysteries, the god embodies the grain that must die to sustain life, a transformation vividly depicted in the Dendera and Philae inscriptions where corn stalks sprout from his recumbent body, watered by the Nile's inundation. Kind of like the chia.
Mm-hmm.
This theology was enacted during the Koaic festival through the burial of corn and earth effigies, mimicking the Eleusinian display of reaped grain, which, when exhumed as sprouted shoots, magically ensured the annual harvest. This promise of regeneration extended beyond the fields into the eternal, as evidenced by archaeological finds like the 1500 BC royal Osiris beds and green stuffed mummiform figures placed in tombs to quicken the deceased. By burying these Osiris of the mysteries figures, the Egyptians bound the biological resurrection of the crop to the spiritual immortality of the soul, believing that just as the grain breaks through the earth, the deceased would rise, sustained by the God who dies, so that humanity might live.
Wonderful. All right. So you see here on the left-hand slide, you can see these depictions of the resurrection of Osiris and the corn sprouting out of the mummy. By the way, I should give a shout out to this website, Isiopolis.com. I find when I do Google searches trying to find information, it's almost always at the top of my searches, and it seems to have some really quality information. This really got me thinking, about the connection between corn and outer space, especially since we're interpreting the rockets as being these obelisks that somehow have something to do with the resurrection of Osiris. Uh, we tend to have this gap in our conversation about the rocket program where it's just like, oh, it got started in the 60s. But really, after the Trinity test, the White Sands Proving Ground was used for a lot of the V2 rockets that were confiscated and brought over from Germany. And very early on in the rocketry program that they had there from Launchpad 33, okay, this number 33 is always very interesting. You can see here one of these rockets was launched with corn in it. And I guess the idea was to test whether or not it be affected by the radiological factors being shot into outer space, though I'm not sure exactly how high this would have been flown in 1946. What's interesting, I'm looking, maybe it's just the way that I've framed this photo here. It almost looks like the I've shrunk it down here to make it fit on the slide, but almost looks like the rocket is launching behind a pyramid. The warehouse or this house that it's launching behind or whatever looks very pyramidal, like kind of like a step pyramid to me. Is that me, or my eyes malfunctioning, or do you guys see that too?
Uh,
Yeah, I see
yeah,
it.
I see that.
It does look very pyramidal, doesn't it? That's
Absolutely.
so, and this creates a bit of a temporal problem as well. We talk about these rocket obelisks, these kinetic obelisks, right? As Jordan described in the AI Google slide that we had for the imagery associating the obelisk with the graveside. But this is going off long before JFK is elevated to the position of power that he's in. These obelisks are already kind of in effect. This is 1946. This is a year after the war ends. Like what do we make of it that like corn is being taken to outer space in the mid 40s? How does that fit if we're saying that the Apollo mission is somehow connected to the Kennedy assassination? Of course, there were rockets that were being shot into outer space at much further distances while JFK was alive. Like they already had the Mercury and Gemini program going at that point. So it poses a bit of a riddle that I'm going to have to address. I don't really have it all worked out, but I thought this was interesting. The other thing I want to point out here, as I was looking into this, just within the past few weeks, out of our favorite institution, this seems to keep coming up. I don't know why all of a sudden Lincoln, Nebraska, and the University of Nebraska is in the headlines, but they have a researcher there who's like, oh yeah, I guess because of this Artemis mission, like everybody's gone moon crazy again. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to plant just rows and rows of corn on the moon, or maybe that's not really his ambition, but just at least get it going there with the idea, especially with this Artemis like nurturing vibe to it all, in contradistinction to the conquering Apollo aspect, that they're going to actually build moon bases and things like that. They're going to practice some sort of agriculture on the moon. So there's like a plan to grow corn on the moon out of Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, which again gets us into the parallels and the synchronicities between JFK and Lincoln. It was funny. I listened to the interview that this was based off. A reporter, I don't know where the reporter was from, he actually interviewed this researcher at the University of Nebraska, and the reporter was like, doesn't corn like require like a lot of water and nutrients? And it was almost like, listening to the interview, like it was almost like the researcher hadn't considered that. It was almost like, oh yeah, like it was like this journalist just asking like a basic critical thinking question, like completely destroyed this. Maybe I don't understand what I was listening to or saw very much, but it seems to be a bit of a non-starter. But what do I know? So I found that to be the timing of that to be quite fortuitous. And then late last night, I was like, I didn't really get back around. What about corn on the moon? What about the corn that's already been there? We've talked about when the corn got shot into outer space in 1946. Well, wouldn't you know, the Apollo astronauts ate cornflakes. They took cornflakes to the moon and they ate cornflakes every morning for breakfast. And they left their garbage on the moon, and their toilet emptied their toilets on the moon. So there is fertilized cornflakes on the moon that they left behind. So it's there. And this is just a picture of the Apollo 11 cornflakes. I believe they sweetened them up. I believe they also had corn chowder. So corn was a part of the early Apollo missions. Not that I
They
expect
failed
corn
to.
to spring from a box of cornflakes, but I find it to be. Kellogg's was very involved in the marketing of the Apollo missions.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Kellogg's, did they abandon their original roots? Like they used to be very Puritan kind of organization, right? Back then, like when they were founded, right?
I don't know. I grew up with so much different. I grew up with like 30 different kinds of breakfast cereal, and I'm sure a lot of them were poisoning me. No.
Yeah, like
Not necessarily. I should clarify this. Just from the sugar content and artificial flavorings and things like that, it was probably not the best food choice. Not intentionally.
yeah. Like, did you like mention like what you wrote here, like maize seeds were being carried out by the V2 launch? I think you did not mention it in the. Did he? Okay,
I
I'm
thought I
a
did.
bad
I thought
student.
I did. I called it corn. I,
Okay,
I,
okay.
but it's maize seeds. Yes, you're right. It is maize
No, this
seeds.
is good. This is like I even never considered it now. Like since you brought it up, it's a glaring hole because like Werner von Braun, he was making these rockets in the
Yeah.
40s. So yeah, that makes sense. I think there would be a lot more things related to this when you look into it, like the launch
Well, I've ordered a
schedules
book.
and everything.
I've ordered a book about this specific period of the American rocketry program, because there's all this stuff on Apollo and Gemini and Mercury, and there's all this stuff about the Trinity test, but it's a tweener subject, like the all the different missiles and things like that they were making, and it draws the connection between the two events that much closer, right?
Yeah.
So
Do tell me
I'll
about the
I'll
book,
I'll
like
get
when
into
you
it
get it.
eventually, but it's a very specific domain of history.
Yeah.
Look how pyramidal that structure is, though. I don't know why it's just now striking me. this almost feels, this picture, it was, I didn't spend hours trying to find one. I think this was one of the best first ones I found. This feels very composed to me.
The house looks like the house of Courage the Cowardly Dog. I
The
mean,
House of what? Oh, Cowardly Dog.
Courage
I
the
don't know.
Cowardly Dog.
Jordan might relate to that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll look deeper into it. All right, I think we have one last slide, and it's fitting. So going back to the Thayer book on Jackie Kennedy, it's just really the gift that keeps on giving. So it's hard to keep all these people straight, but Jackie had a great relationship with her grandfather, who I guess she just called Gramps. His name was John Vernal Bouvier Jr. So John Vernal Bouvier III was her father. That's Blackjack. And this is the only picture that I could find of him. And they would write, as a little girl, she would write poems back and forth with her grandfather. It's a nice little ritual that they had. And I fell asleep reading this book in bed. I was like, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, wouldn't it be great if he wrote a poem about her being Isis? And then I like woke up like a few minutes later and I read this poem. So far as I know, he didn't write a poem about her being Isis, but he did write a poem about her being Diana and Artemis. So I'll read it real quick. To the youthful Artemis, Diana, mistress of the chase, and of all sylvan arts the queen, performing with supremest grace the sports on which the healthful lean. Favorites sometimes caught her eye, and 'tis to them her skill she lent. All in the days that have gone by, of ancient times, how long since spent. But strange sweet maiden to relate, she has since crowned a modern queen, nor did her art one jot abate when 'twas bestowed on Jacqueline. Congratulations, Gramps. And, if we needed any help understanding that Artemis was a syncretized version of Isis, this comes from Isidorus's Hymn 1, the four Greek hymns of Isidorus and the Cult of Isis, translated by Vera Frederica Vanderlip. And it goes, the Syrians call you Astarte, Artemis, Nanea. The Lycian tribes call you Leto, the lady. The Thracians also name you as mother of the gods. And the Greeks call you Hera of the great throne, Aphrodite. Hestia, the goodly Rhea and Demeter. But the Egyptians call you Theosis. From Egyptian Tayuat, the only one, because they know that you, being one, are all the goddesses invoked by the races of men. Mighty one, I shall not cease to sing of your great power, deathless savior, many named mightiest Isis, saving from war cities and all their citizens, men, their wives, possessions, and children, as many as are bound fast in prison in the power of death. It's a much longer poem. It's a much longer hymn, but I'll take it. I fell asleep. I was like, oh, I wish he'd write her a poem about Isis. He calls her Diana and Artemis. That's enough for me. We see that all spelled out here. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. Also, like back in those days, they were thinking about syncretized religion. So like they knew like they knew about the golden bough back then. They were very self-aware. We don't give them enough credit, I think.
Oh, no. Oh, I should say this. It makes sense to call her Artemis. This was her 14th birthday, right? Artemis is a goddess of like,
The maiden.
yeah, it's more
Yeah.
virginal, right? Whereas
Mhm.
Isis is the mother. So it would be inappropriate to address her at Isis at this stage of her life. So you could maybe argue that she might have had more of that Artemis archetype functioning, and then as a woman, as a mother, she became Isis. So they're not the same. They are different.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost feel like too, like, hmm, Isis energetically feels more totally encompassing. It's not that I associate Isis with like the crone, but there is definitely a different tone of maturity woven into that figure.
Jordan, I wasn't watching the clock. It's 1:52.
I know.
Okay. So we should
Yeah.
end it. We should end it for Jordan.
Any final thoughts? This was really great. I really loved today. Thank you so much for putting it together.
Yeah. That's what I do.
Austic, any
Same.
departing observations?
Yeah, happy Easter.
Happy
think-
Easter, guys.
Yeah, happy whatever you're celebrating. It's another one of those points where there's like a million different festivals and
Yeah.
things
And this was a
happening.
good one, like Dr. Luke. Like getting back to it. Yeah.
I just give what comes to me each week. So, you know.
Yeah.
And I know we
yeah.
have roughly 2 hours to do it. So I let that limit me.
Yeah, this was also very chill. We could talk. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. See you guys
Thanks,
next week.
guys.